Hello and welcome to the dMBA podcast where we share business confidence with the design community. In this episode, I have both Franz and Tom with me. Hey Franz, hey Tom.
Hey.
Hello.
We're gonna do a special episode, something we discussed last time and we thought it could be a cool new format to try out. And yeah, you may have noticed that we're trying a lot of new formats lately. So this is one of those things.
Find some format that works eventually.
Yeah. And we may have found it. Let's see. So it's something we just work in progress decided to call business design teardown. So we're gonna take certain interesting brands or companies, something that our community loves. So brands and companies that designers love, and we're gonna basically have a look at those from the business perspective. We're gonna apply our business brains to it.
Is that all you can do with selling our new concept?
No, I mean I wanted to give some space for you, Franz, so you can sell it further. Go ahead.
Come on, we're gonna take companies that are awesome because, for example, we wear it every day or we watch it every day. But we don't really think about how they do stuff and are they even successful. And we thought this would be really cool to talk about it. Like, is this company that I'm wearing and I love so much actually successful from a business perspective? Are they doing some weird stuff, maybe? Or are they doing only great stuff? So we're trying to find this out and chat about it.
Did we forgot to mention something about the concept, Tom? Because
No.
it's your brainchild as well.
Well, we'll see how this goes. I think you've both summed it up pretty well, but I would say when it comes to learning new concepts, right, business stuff, and we talked about this in another recent pod where we were answering people's questions in the mailbag. You should definitely check out that format as well. Another new one we've been playing with was how can I find interesting ways to learn about business concepts rather than just being really dry. That question was specifically around metrics, and Alen suggested, look, dive into the financials of like a football team you love or a business you love and find that hook, and that'll really draw you in. And so we really think that using businesses that designers love as a sort of case study could be a really good way for people to start gaining a bit of knowledge, seeing examples in the wild, particularly for brands that sort of we maybe affiliate with a little more. So it's really just using these brands that we love or hate. There's going to be people who hate some of these brands, and rightfully so. But whatever kind of gets you interested, and we're going to tear down a whole bunch of aspects, brands, strategy, financials, and just see what we can uncover.
That was the best pitch. The best out of the three.
Pitch X Factor.
I should have just
I'm
let
through to
you
boot
go.
camp.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you may already kind of have the idea for which company we chose today to kind of dissect and tear down, because I'm wearing a funny looking hat with a special logo on top. But maybe let's start with those who are not watching on YouTube. What are you wearing today, Tom?
I am wearing, and I'm going to comment on your hat in a second. I'm intentionally wearing this brand today, and we were going to do a sort of introduction to the pod where it was like a bit of a teaser, like can you guess who the brand is that we're tearing down today, and then realised that it's going to be in the title whether you're listening to it or watching it. So there's no real anticipation unless, like you should be, just pressing play on a new dMBA podcast when it arrives, regardless, without even looking at it. But we're talking today about a brand that I'm wearing. This is the City Sweat hoodie of Lululemon. And Alen is, looks very convincing, your Lululemon hat. Great knockoff. I would say the one thing that I would pull out, and we're going to touch on this later, is that Lululemon don't tend to really put their logo on their stuff. And that's one of the things that we'll touch on that tends to kind of mark it out. One of the reasons a lot of people love it is it's not too flashy with logos. Baseball caps aside, actually, they do a sort of stitch logo. They don't go with the kind of post-it note drawn out.
We now need to reveal to all listeners, not watchers, what's actually going on here. So Alen wears a baseball cap and he drew the Lululemon logo on a post-it and stuck it to his forehead. This is what we are looking at.
That's
right
what we're
now.
looking at. Yeah. It's very convincing. I highly recommend pulling up the YouTube version just for that alone. So Lululemon are the first brand that we're gonna dive into. So maybe I should just start off by kind of giving a bit of background to the company, and then a bit of why designers. Why lots of people like Lululemon, but there's a few reasons I think that they designers kind of have taken the brand to heart.
I need to interrupt you because
Sure.
everybody told everyone what they're wearing.
Oh, what are you wearing?
I am wearing an Adidas t-shirt.
So you are. Yes.
I am because I've actually worked for Adidas for 4 years, even 5. Yeah.
Really?
So that was my job during my student days. I was working in like on-site marketing, and I was training retail like clerks on innovations, new products. I was hosting events. So that was on the one hand really nice to learn like how to present to people, but on the other hand, it's like sports industries is always emotions. Like it's always, you go to an event, your job is obviously to represent the brand in a way that the brand's image should be. So you want to be in a good mood, you want to be the sporty person, you want to just psych people up, and honestly I really enjoyed doing this. So that was a great job, and my closet is still full of Adidas.
Nice.
Some parts from the time that I was working there, because it's actually lasting. Other parts new because I'm still brainwashed. I gotta be honest. Like whenever I see stuff, then I'm like, nice sneaker. Is it Adidas? Yeah, it's Adidas. I can buy it.
Interesting. I mean, maybe topic for another pod, but I find the Adidas, particularly the big names, right? The Adidas, Nike, different approach is really interesting. Personally, I always felt like Adidas have not quite, still on a marketing level, don't quite attach on that emotional level like Nike do. I think no one beats them when it comes to that part. And I think the brand we're going to talk about today, Lululemon, do this pretty well as well. But I'm going to have to pick your brains on what you're feeling at the moment. Is it the Sambas revival? We'll talk about that another time. But Franz is letting the side down by wearing Adidas. He hasn't even put a knockoff logo on it like Alen did. But Lululemon, so founded in Vancouver in Canada. A lot of people think they're an American company because, I mean, most of their stores are in the States, like 300 odd of the over 500, like massive presence there, but actually founded by a Californian, but started in Vancouver in 1998 by a chap called Chip Wilson. He'd already had experience.
Wait, so it was started by a guy?
Yeah, by a chap called Chip Wilson.
It's interesting because weren't they like focused just on women in the beginning?
Completely massive focus on the female market, and still do now. Still, the majority of their market is female. But he noticed this trend for yoga, and he had this kind of rule that if he saw something kind of mentioned 3 times in the same day or in a very short space of time, that was a trend that he wanted to kind of latch onto. And he'd done this with skateboarding and snowboarding in the past, and had worked and built an apparel brand in those arenas, and then saw that yoga was starting to really take hold, particularly where he was living at the time. Attended a yoga class, and it was all women apart from him. He was the only man there, and because he had this background in apparel and in fabrics, and his mum was a seamstress, he'd kind of grown up around kind of manufacturing of clothing. He noticed that what they were wearing was really unsuitable for yoga. It was like heavy cotton, and he was like, there's a massive opportunity here to design a new product that is stylish, comfortable, sweat wicking, a real different type of clothing to wear for this new pursuit that was just becoming enormously popular, and with a 99% of the time kind of female base. So yeah, absolutely right. Massive focus on the female market. Enormous amount of research into what women need from their clothing, which usually the other way around, right? Usually sports apparel brands are male first, women second, and that probably is reflected in the way that things are constructed. They're maybe not always suitable for that market. So one of the first brands really to be like, right, what do women need from this kind of apparel, and designing from that perspective. So yeah, and the Lululemon and Chip basically carved out this corner of the market, invented the yoga pant, which has now kind of become just an absolute staple, right? And invented this segment, which is now known as athleisure, which is enormous, like $300 billion a year segment now, of which Lulu is kind of still a leader in the luxury part of that. And that's the other bit that they did that no one had really done before, was make workout wear luxury, bring that premium angle, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit more. Since then, obviously expanded well outside of just yoga, does all kinds of pursuits, all kinds of workout wear, shorts, joggers, tops, the works, water bottles, really, really heavily expanded. And in 2013, got into menswear. So quite a long time just focus on women's apparel. I think I don't want to kind of get into too much more before passing over to both of you when it comes to kind of brand positioning and growth. But I do have a few fun facts that I'd like to share with you about Lululemon. So Chip Wilson called it Lululemon intentionally with lots of L's in there, because apparently L's, like, linguistically aren't like a thing in Japanese language, apparently. Like
Are not or are?
Aren't. So linguistically, the L either isn't in the alphabet or is not something that's vocalized very easily or very often. So he wanted to choose a brand name that would come across as very Western, right? And that would be authentically Western and an appealing aspect of the brand in that territory. And he'd done a lot of work in Japan, knew that was a big market. He'd grown kind of snowboarding brands out there. So yeah, that's why it's called Lululemon, with all the L's.
Interesting.
When the first store opened, this is like horrifying. I can't imagine ever doing this. There was a publicity stunt with the first 30 people who turned up naked to the store would get the product for free. I can't think of anything worse personally, but it created this kind of publicity storm, lots of coverage in the press.
So different times.
Different times.
Well, okay, I was just about to say 1998, just let this there.
Yeah. Luckily not much social media, not lots of smartphone.
Still happens
cameras.
in Berlin with the clubs and stuff.
Oh, yes. Apparently.
Yeah, but that's more on brand. At least.
Yes, true. And then the final thing is they're famous for their men's pants, which I'm a fan of, are called the ABC pants.
Yeah.
Do either of you know what that stands for, or can you guess?
No idea.
The only connection I have with ABC is from like one of the sales books, and it means always be closing. And I'm assuming this is not the case.
Not it. Let's just say it's to do with comfort, and it's called anti-ball crushing technology. A very uniquely designed gusset that makes it very their trousers, as we call them over here, very, very comfortable. So yeah, a few little fun facts there. Anything you'd like to add in the background before I sort of jump into why people kind of like the brand and like designs in particular?
I just have questions for you, because I wanted to know how you came in touch with Lululemon and how you became a fan, unless Franz has any questions.
Nope.
No. I started wearing their stuff a couple of years ago when I started seriously getting into like fitness. So started seeing a PT every week. Have done for a few years now, and wanted some like high quality stuff that was kind of more nicely designed than the stuff I had already, and also more conveniently with stuff that I could sort of wear to the gym, which is on the way to work, and then not have to get changed. So that is definitely one of the areas where they excel, and that is part of their sort of design ethos. Is this is stuff that crosses over. You know, you can wear the joggers and the t-shirts in the office, and it doesn't look like you're there in your sort of
three stripes Adidas.
The three stripes, yeah. No offense to Franz, who's
taking on myself. Yeah.
Absolutely rocking the brand, but it has that crossover, and the technology and the materials as well is like designed to like not be stinky, basically. So for me, it was that. And yeah, just like the cut and I mean, this is a privileged thing to be able to do and aspire to doing, but I'm trying to buy much fewer clothes and just fewer things in my life generally, and just make sure they're a bit higher quality. So I've been a lot more intentional with the products I buy, and was looking for brands that are known to have that kind of high quality, gonna last a long time, and just have a few items. So that very much kind of aligned with what I try and do these days as far as any consumption. I realise that is a privilege to buy usually more expensive items that last longer, and Lululemon is expensive. So yeah, a couple of years.
There's this saying I've heard a few times, which is like, I don't have enough to buy cheaply. I've heard it from a few people, like, it basically says that like when you buy something that at a cheaper price, it just breaks down more frequently, and then at the end it ends up being more expensive than if you just went for the more high quality option. Obviously, again, this is like from the perspective of the privilege, but I think it's for certain like product categories, it's definitely true. Like you need to buy 2 pairs of shoes instead of just one that kind of doesn't rip.
Yeah, absolutely. I've taken this approach with like outdoor stuff and footwear. I don't have a very big house.
I realized I have another.
What's he got there? He's got another logo stuck on his glass.
Work in progress.
From prototyping it. But yeah, from my perspective, that was it really. And I went on a bit of I bought a lot of their stuff in one go, and have basically been wearing that stuff for a few years now. I haven't really bought any new items from them for a long time, and part of that is because thankfully, like, their styles don't change very often. It's very kind of minimal, clean cuts, no logos, and kind of sort of, I don't want to say timeless because it's not like high fashion, but the stuff's going to look just as acceptable in probably another few years. So for me, I've already touched on a few of the things I think that why it appeals. So yeah, I think it's that design and functionality piece. It's like minimal cuts, clean lines, not too flashy. You can wear it across work and home, which is great. I'm somebody who likes to optimize as well, so I think a lot of designers do, and my day is easier if I don't have to keep switching out of stuff. And the quality, right? Well made. They have like t-shirts, which I've got a few of, called the 5-year tee, which is basically this t-shirt should last you 5 years. Like wear it every day, wash it all the time, shape stays. And I think designers care about sustainability and quality, and so that kind of for me draws in on that really nicely. And yeah, they invest heavily in like products and innovation. That's interesting, right? Like I say, the fit of things like the bottoms, the joggers and stuff like that, just like super comfy. You can watch the YouTube stuff, read the stuff on their website, and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of thought that's gone into how these are constructed. They're going to last. They're going to be really comfortable. And then from a brand perspective, I think it's appealing when they've got like serious levels of consistency of brand, right? Across like they own every aspect of it, from the like material development to the design, to the store experience and online. It really feels like it's really vertically integrated, which is, I'm sure, something we'll touch on a bit more. And consistency and fit as well. Once you know your size in their stuff, like it's just, it's going to be really reliable. And then I think there is that aspirational aspect that Franz already touched on and might go into a bit more of like the way they market themselves, the way they position the brand of being like, I think, you know, most sports brands do this though. I don't think this is unique to Lululemon, of like the visuals of like, you're going to be an outdoorsy physical person who cares for their well-being just by wearing the t-shirt. You know, there's a lot of psychology around how they position that. A big part of their position is around community as well, which again, we'll probably touch on when we get into brand strategy a little bit more. So yeah, I'm rocking a bit of it today. So I think that's probably enough of me waffling on about why I'm a fan, and maybe we can get a little more into some of the nitty gritty of the brand and the strategy.
Gotta say, Tom, you almost took away all my points.
Sugar.
This is why I'm gonna start differently.
Okay.
This is why I'm gonna ask you a question, not
Sure.
both of you. So, what is strategy even?
Just generally,
Yeah, what is a strategy?
I've been talking long enough. I'm going to pass this hot potato to Alen for you to build on.
Well, you know my definition. It's deciding what to do and not to do in a business sense. So what you invest in and what you not invest in. So you're looking for the trade-off decisions.
Yeah. Great job, Alen.
Thank
You
you.
made it. Exactly. So that's what I was thinking about. So I was thinking about, okay, what's now the company's strategy in terms of what have they decided to do and what have they decided to not do? And let's say regular listeners to our podcast also not only know this, what to do and what not to do and trade-off story, but also that the most defendable strategies are the ones that are somewhat different to an arenas dominant approach, rather than focusing on taking on Adidas with a better soccer shoe, right? So it's being different. So now a lot of things have already been brought up. I'm going to start with the core difference that now seems super logical, but in 1998 it was not logical at all. So this core trade-off or differentiation was combining luxury fashion with athletic wear. So two things that are now kind of very apparent when you walk streets. You see people in leggings, or me wearing I don't really even know what these pants are called, but I know I can wear it to the gym and I can also wear it to almost every leisure event, and they're comfy. So this athleisure, as they called it, this was not a thing, right? So they actually pioneered these two things with a higher price points, absolutely no discounts, premium product, a lot of, as you already said, proprietary fabrics and own development, limited releases, what only like luxury brands would do, and like doing this for products that were formerly utilities, right? Things you would buy to do sports. So this combination of luxury brand and sportswear was completely new. But the interesting thing is that it's not just a combination. It's not just a luxury sports brand, right? There is more to that. They made more unique strategic choices that kind of positioned them in the market. So guessing game, what are the other, let's say, unique choices, and we already had some of them today, that they took in order to be different from the rest of the market?
Focus on just female.
Correct.
Focus just on yoga in the beginning.
Also correct.
I'm not sure actually. Yeah, I can't think of any others other than those two as like core differentiators.
Being premium. That's another, I think, it's going back to the
that was
generic.
already in the first one, in the core difference. But yes, it's also
Yeah.
a difference. Yeah, so I think the first thing was really the smartness of, if I want to start a company, I am going into a niche that's big enough for me, but small enough or too small for one of the big ones, right? So yoga in 1998, Adidas, Nike, they were like, whatever. So that doesn't really move our needle, right? But for a small company, winning the yoga market, okay, that's a good business. Let's see where we go from there. So this finding a niche that is underserved but big enough to have a company, that's the first one, right? So next one, women approach. So women first approach. We already talked about this. Generally, sports or a lot of markets are dominated by male managers and designers. There is this system of that's the bigger market, so we need to go after them, and then it will dribble down to the other side. So in this case, it was completely different. That was not apparent at all in the sportswear industry, because it was always the other way around. So that was definitely completely different. Next one, Tom, you actually touched upon this community approach. So now something with social media that is quite easy to do and quite logical to do. But again, at this point in time, being different also meant, hey, I'm going to have a yoga class as part of my company. I'm going to build this community. I'm going to actively talk to them. So making your buyers, your friends and promoters, that's something that they did differently to other sports, and especially luxury brands, because luxury brands are usually like, no.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Usually a bit standoffish, a bit kind of, aloof even, but really interesting. I think I read that like the first store was like a hybrid kind of place to buy the clothes, but also a place to talk about fitness and wellness and do yoga classes, way before community became such like the aspect that it is now in business strategy. And
then the interesting thing is exactly this pairing with luxury and community, right? So sports and community kind of go together. You're in a, I don't know, whatever sports class, you do this together, but luxury and community, luxury is more like exclusivity, and you're kind of want to be different and not together with others. But bringing this together is a really interesting approach. You just mentioned stores, Tom.
Yes.
That's definitely also a differentiation from their perspective, because direct to consumer wasn't really a thing and still isn't such a big thing in the sportswear industry, right? So you might have brand stores like flagship stores of Nike and stuff, but their main channel is third party.
Yeah.
And for Lululemon, its actually main channel is direct to consumer. And also when you look at numbers, their direct to consumer channels still grow much faster than third party channels. So in 2020, this is the latest number that I found, they had 92% growth in direct to consumer sales, so shops and online shop, and only 21% in third party stores.
Right.
So that's quite interesting, that usually, because a brand store is usually not your sales driver. Your brand store is your marketing machine for taking nice pictures and being in the biggest street of a city, maybe just 10 cities worldwide. So it's usually not a sales driver, but for Lululemon, it actually is. And it also really helped them to have these fast innovation cycles, being in touch with users, and being this vertically integrated brand, from design and developing fabrics down to selling it directly to users. Yeah.
Yeah, I also found some data on this. So 46% of the revenue comes from direct to consumer.
You found this data?
Yeah, this is from the...
Nice research skills, Alen.
I can tell you later how I found it. I mean, to all of you. But yeah, 46% direct to consumer. So this is basically e-commerce. And then 45%, so equal basically, is from stores. And then the remaining 9% is certain wholesale accounts or temporary locations or outlets and so on. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. So e-commerce and brands are equal.
That is interesting. Yeah, the stores aspects. Yeah, I'd never really thought about the fact that, I mean, they've got hundreds of stores, and like you say, for a lot of sportswear brands, it's Nike Town, it's that flagship store. And it's interesting the way they tie the community aspect into the store piece, because one of the things I learned about them is that the managers of the stores have a lot of autonomy over how they run their stores as well, the layout, the color schemes, all of that kind of stuff. They sort of give a lot of trust over. People tend to stick around because of that autonomy, and they promote heavily from within as well. So I think there's a real community aspect to the way that the business is run internally as well. I think they've put an awful lot of investment into progression frameworks and internal wellness, again, ahead of probably a lot of other brands that are now picking up more and more on the importance of that.
Yeah. I only got one more differentiator. Now it's obvious. But back then, value-driven sportswear company wasn't really a thing. So
they've been like this from the beginning?
Yeah. That's what I ask myself. So now obviously they are this brand focusing on be human, be planet, be, I don't know what's the third one. So really strong and outward communicated, let's say, corporate social responsibility picture. And we all are not impressed by this anymore, I guess, because everybody tries to do this. So I was like, is this like now because everybody does it, or is this like always? And apparently that was something that they focused on early on, with some mishaps on the way. And that's what happens to many companies. We're going to talk about this later when we talk about threats. But yeah, they actually really try to go after sustainable business practices and ethical business practices from day one, with taking care of or thinking about labor and where they produce their goods, also empowering employees. And this obviously helps building a brand if you can trust that, right? If you have actually reason to believe that it's more than just the 3 values on the website. And it seems that it was the case from the beginning and mostly throughout its history.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to getting into the bits you talk about later, the threats, because you've mentioned a lot of things that have been like real moats for them for a long time that now we take for granted. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. But it sounds to me like it's the story of a focus. So if you're trying to understand why they have been successful until now, and that we discussed it today in our Teams meeting, like there has been this research. What is the most important thing for companies, whether they will succeed or not? And this was done on research was done mostly on like small startups, which were VC backed, because they were trying to understand, like, is it based on the team's expertise? Is it on the product quality, location of the company, timing, and so on? And you know what the result was? Timing. Timing is the most important thing. And if you go back to 1998, the Lululemon, now looking back, I think we can all agree it was like super innovative, and it just had the right time in finding an interesting niche that was growing very, very fast. And it still took 25 years to get to the stage where it is today. But it's like focus on a specific niche that has a big potential over time. And even within this niche, have a focus and further on just one particular customer segment. Obviously, that's one part of the story. Another one is like just being good with creating a product, having enough, good execution of the branding, good execution of like the distribution and so on. Yeah. But yeah, this is one of the basic things when looking at these stories when starting out is like, can I own my own category? And companies that create categories have a really good chance of also being then the winners, big winners.
Yeah.
Financial winners, if I may say.
Because that's the next topic.
Good
exactly.
Segue.
Unless you want to learn more about competitive landscape.
I'm going to cover it a little bit in the financials, but as you will.
I'm just thinking what's now a good order, because I did find it interesting to have a look at. I mean, one part of analyzing a strategy also means looking at competitors, and I was just about to think, okay, who are they? And I also thought about who might be challengers for them. So I'm going to be quick with that, okay? I'm going to give you a quick picture of competitive landscape. I gave them also good names, I think. So, so the market is like $300 billion big in 2021. And there are a group of companies, I just think about how to phrase it so I can make it a game. There is a group of company that owns 69% of this market. Who are these companies?
Which market? Now we're talking just athleisure or something else?
No, athletic wear.
Athletic wear. So this includes basketball shoes.
Anything that you wear for sports.
Okay. I mean, Adidas, Nike, Puma.
Stop.
Adidas and Nike, 69%.
Yeah.
It's wild, isn't it?
And stop.
It's crazy.
69% of this market is in the hands of two companies. Okay, so these are our, let's say, grandparents. I call them grandparents. So they're like super old companies and big winners of this market still. Then there is the next group. I call them all-time seconds.
Definitely Puma.
Yes.
Under Armour.
Yes.
New Balance?
Yes.
I love New Balance. They're on the way.
What's this new Roger Federer brand? On? Or
Doesn't
something?
count.
On.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, true. Essex. So the thing with, now we're back at strategy. Why will they be all-time seconds? Because they're just the same. Like, how is Adidas different from Puma, Under Armour? Like, there is like subtle difference.
There's subtle differences, aren't there?
In
But they're
focus,
still
but
quite
in
niche.
the end, they're like kind of the smaller version of. Nobody will like this when they if they work for these companies and they hear this. But I think from perception, and I've worked in this industry, it's like, yeah. When I see Lululemon, I'm like, okay, yeah, different. But when I see the all-time seconds, I'm like, they are always going to be at 7%. They will never grow. They will never maybe lose. But Puma is never going to, like, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
Puma is a good example. I think it's a prime example for always second. Or
Yeah.
what's the name of the category?
Yeah, all-time seconds.
All-time
All-time
seconds.
seconds.
Puma feels to me like the kind of brand that has tried to cover a whole bunch of those the same sports, very broad. Whereas I tend to think of like definitely Asics, New Balance, Under Armour. They do they're kind of working to a much smaller set of sports and pursuits,
True.
and that feels intentional. And so I can say, obviously they're nowhere near the size of the likes of Nike and Adidas, but I do feel like they niche down more into their sort of specialisms.
Yeah, when it comes to choosing the sports they're active in, definitely. But within this, it's pretty like Asics is running. Under Armour, I think it's very good in like American football. Yeah, true.
Interesting.
True that. Now we're getting into the smaller but interesting ones, luxury apparel brands following into athleisure. Chanel, Versace.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
these ones.
Okay. There might be some other brands you're going to come up with. There's a few more that I sort of thought would be in that category. I don't know how much they do. Do they do much in? I mean, I obviously am not the kind of person wearing Versace.
I didn't know. This was a classic Googling exercise,
Okay.
ChatGPT exercise. I was like, okay, somebody from the luxury like bucket must have followed them, right? Because it's obvious. And it seems like that a lot of them did. I think first mover even was Stella McCarthy together with Adidas. I was part of this launch because that was in like 2010. So that was a huge, I think, almost a move into this luxury athletic, but still being able to wear this outside. But this was still Adidas. So I was looking for, are there any other like high-end fashion brands? And yeah, it seems like it's the case that they're going after this market as well. Not sure how successful though, and I didn't do the research. Then we have holy e-commerce brands.
Holy.
Holy.
Holy. Like godly or?
not holy, but
With a W?
only e-commerce. Only e-commerce direct to consumer.
In the athleisure world, I think of, and I don't know if they're only direct to consumer actually. I only think of them online as like Alo Yoga and Gymshark. They're the two big competitors I think of.
Gymshark grew 70% in 2021.
Wow. I tend to think of that. I can see how they're a competitor. I do tend to see them more as like very functional gym wear, though. I don't feel like it crosses over quite as nicely as Lululemon. Whereas Alu Yoga, it feels like it's the same silhouettes and very, very similar.
Just cheaper, probably.
Interesting approach, Joe, because potentially a threat because of cost structure, right? So you're not like, you don't have to have the same price point if you're not first mover, if you don't have a brick and mortar store, and you can benefit from good community, good marketing, and just follow the breeze that Lululemon created. So that's definitely an interesting category. And the last one that I have is everybody can be a creator. Startups, like, it's almost like a craft beer. You know, this craft beer wave that we had some years ago? It feels like there is the same with apparel brands. Like, if you're a fitness influencer and you have a following base, you create your own apparel like this because of accessible supply chain and because of a strategy or business model shift in the supply chain of apparel. Because there's a lot of white label stuff right now. Earlier, it was really hard to be able to produce on a mass scale apparel, and now it's almost like it's easy. There is companies that specialized in white label production and being able to produce also lower quantities of apparel, and it's an easy job to get into having your own apparel company. Maybe that doesn't include your own proprietary fabrics, but who knows? Maybe that's gonna grow. But I feel like it's an interesting bucket of companies because it's so grassroots and it has a bit purely on social, and that's why I found it interesting, and that's why it made one bucket in my arena.
Are there more buckets?
No, that's it.
But like, even if you look at this, the interesting observation is you have pressure from both sides. So if you're Lululemon, there's pressure from newcomers, and then there's pressure from the big ones, the big companies. So you have Adidas and Nike obviously going after you, but then you also have all these influencers and smaller brands. I mean, just here, like in Slovenia, there have been like 3 or 4 successful legging brands launched in the last 3-4 years from people with good social media following, and it just seems to be the thing. Like, it seems to be the new wave. Instead of me creating the meal supplement or food supplement, I'm creating leggings, and it does seem to be going better than with food supplements thinking. But anyway, I think you have this pressure from both sides, and that is tricky. That is tricky. You really need to then defend well from both sides.
Yeah.
When are the dMBA leggings coming out, Alan?
We're thinking of hoodies.
Yeah.
And we already have stickers. But the problem is everything is digital. What are we doing? So I have a bunch of stickers at home, but who am I going to hand it to? I can hand it out on crosswalks when somebody crosses the road. And I'm like, here's a D for you.
We just bring them to the meetups. Yeah. So I still have hundreds of them here. Going into the finance.
Yeah.
So Franz gave me a thumbs up on my research because I found data he didn't. And maybe what I would first start with is just how you usually do this. Like, how do you have a look at finances? So Lululemon is a publicly traded company. So it means you can buy its stocks. It means that it is required for this type of companies to share their financial data online. So if you just go on Lululemon and type in, or if you just go on Google and type in Lululemon annual report or quarterly report, you're going to get the last report that the company has shared with its investors. So even if you're not an investor, even if you're just curious about a company, you can use this to find all kind of interesting data points. It does look a little bit thick. It's a lot of text. It definitely wasn't designed by a designer. It was just, it just looks like an ugly Word document. But there's a lot of really, really useful stuff in there. And I'm going to share a few things that I found in the document plus some additional things. And we're going to start with just the revenue. And I think we talked about it in the last episode, in one of the last episodes, that the very first thing I usually have a look at is just, the revenue of the company and how big the company is. So before we even go into the exact number, I'm just going to, Franz and Tom, I'm going to give you a few other companies, the name of other companies, and you're going to tell me if they have more revenue or less revenue than Lululemon.
Okay.
Okay?
So more or less refers to the other company.
Yeah, no.
So if you say Adidas,
example,
I say more, because I think Adidas has more revenue.
For example.
Yeah, okay, so let's do a test. So does Adidas or Lululemon have more revenue? Franz says Adidas.
Adidas.
Okay, that's easier.
Okay, good. That was a good test. Then the next one is, let's have a look at maybe a more trickier one. What do you think? Who has more revenue, Under Armour or Lululemon?
That's really good one.
Lululemon.
I was going to say Lululemon as well, but I think that's because I had a bit of a blind spot for me with Under Armour around what they do. But yeah, Lululemon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, both of you are correct. So Lululemon does have more revenue than Under Armour. So
Can I say one thing?
You looked it up today, or
no? Before my research,
yeah.
I only looked up Lululemon's revenue. I didn't look up Under Armour's revenue. But before I looked up Lululemon's revenue today, I would have always said Under Armour.
Yeah.
Just by.
So you have one data point, which is how much.
And I was like.
And were you surprised when you saw how much Lululemon makes?
Yes, I was really surprised by their scope.
It's crazy. So, just to reveal now, it's $8 billion. Okay, and Under Armour it's 5.8. Wow. So it's not even a small difference; it's huge.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? I think if I wasn't so familiar with Lululemon, I would have never ever had them anywhere near.
No,
I would have given them maybe $1 billion.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go to the next example. Let's see, how does Lululemon? So does Lululemon or Puma have more revenue?
I'm going to Puma.
I'm countering Lululemon.
Okay, I mean, it's very, very close. So Puma has 8.9 billion and Lululemon has 8.1 billion.
Wow.
So that for me was a huge surprise. I thought Puma is much bigger than Lululemon, but it's basically just 10% difference. It's unbelievable.
And Puma is founded 1940s.
Yeah, it was the same time as Adidas. Yeah, have a look. Okay, next one. Let's go into a different industry. So does Zoom,
1948.
So the video conferencing company, 1948. Okay, does Zoom or Lululemon have more revenue?
God, Zoom. I'm going to go Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Franz?
Lululemon. I don't know. I have no idea what Zoom. But if they have more than 8 billion in revenue, then I don't know.
You're correct. So Zoom has 4.4 billion and Lululemon has 8.1. What about Slack?
Lululemon.
That was easy. Yeah, that's okay. That is probably the easiest one and the biggest delta. What about Spotify? So Spotify or Lululemon?
Spotify.
You made it sound like it's a big difference.
I think it
but
is. I bet it's not,
Yeah.
based on what you've just said, your tone. But yeah.
I mean, it's a considerable difference, but I still thought it's much bigger. So Spotify has 12.3 billion in revenue, and Lululemon has 8.1.
Still,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we're
It's
talking
unbelievable.
4 billion,
Yeah.
which is a lot, but closer than you'd think, I guess.
Yeah, in relative terms, it's still like Lululemon is huge.
Mm.
It's much bigger than I expected it to be, especially like thinking about tech all the time. I just felt like Zoom is definitely bigger. Spotify is much bigger, but like it's just unbelievable big. Lululemon is. By the way, all the data I shared is 2022 data. So just FYI. And yeah, just for comparison, Adidas is 24 billion and Nike is 46 billion. So Nike is still like way ahead from all of these. The next thing is I just quickly had a look at also their growth. With revenue, it's not just important how much revenue a certain company has, but also like how fast it's growing. And usually with companies that are this big, you see like single digit growth. I don't know, 5%, 6%, like 8, 9 would already be a lot. And Lululemon grew by 30% from 2021 to 2022. So from 6.2 billion to 8.1 billion.
That's also a reason why I thought they have like 800 million in revenue. Because if somebody grows like 30%, this usually means they're either digital or small.
Exactly.
But
That's another thing,
physical
like-
and big is not like,
Yeah.
it usually doesn't have 30% growth.
Yeah, it's hard to scale 30% with hardware.
Do
I'm saying
we-
hardware is obviously not like a computer, but it's still like a physical product.
Do we know, I don't know if you want to touch on what might have been the driver of that kind of growth? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way I see it is like bigger trends. So with COVID, everybody just started working from home. So obviously you also start for home wearing different clothes. That's one thing. Another thing is just in general, like the growth of these yoga sports, or like, I don't know how to call them, functional sports, not like the traditional team sports. That's definitely another one. The growth of e-commerce, I think, open up. Oh, it's also their focus on like, they're really opening a lot of stores every year. Like at the moment they have 655 stores in 18 countries. Half of them are in the US, but like 120 are in China. They have more stores than Apple. Apple has 500 stores. They have more stores than IKEA. IKEA has 400 stores. And they have more stores than Whole Foods, which has 500 supermarkets.
Wow.
By the way, do you know, fun fact, which company in the world has the most stores?
The most stores. Is it going to be something like 7-Eleven or a convenience?
7-Eleven.
Is it
Wow,
7-Eleven?
That's very good.
Wow.
Very good.
Nice
Yeah.
one.
Very good guess. I would have gone for McDonald's probably.
Oh yeah, McDonald's, of course.
But it's 40,000. Yeah.
right.
It's not there. Yeah. I just love playing with numbers. It just tells me so much. Yeah.
It really sets an incredible context for a brand that, like you say, just a lot of people, it would not even be on their radar, but enormous and just crazy numbers. And that growth is just incredible. I don't know how much of that is attributed as well. I don't know if either of you are going to touch on this, but they acquired a fitness hardware company, I think,
Mirror?
a couple of years. Mirror, yeah, for like 500 million. Because off of, like you mentioned, Alan, the sort of COVID trend for working out more at home.
Yeah.
It's a premium thing like Peloton, where it's like this mirror that all, like plays fitness routines and things like that and gives you feedback. You can see yourself in it. It's pretty cool, but I don't know how much of that has kind of been an engine of growth for them.
I didn't see this breakdown within the annual report. Maybe there is, but I just didn't see it. So I don't have this data. Yeah, but if they invested 500 million in it, they probably expect a
Bit
good
of a return.
chunk. Yeah. Then after I check the revenue, I obviously also want to check company's profitability just to get a sense for how it's doing there. And their net income is 10%. So 850 million after taxes, which is also pretty impressive for a company that's doing physical products.
Yeah, physical product
Yes,
company. Physical
exactly.
product.
Yeah, because those are many times in single-digit profit margins, like between, I don't know, 3 and 7%, but 10 is like, that's above average. It's really good. Not as good as like tech products again, but still, this is amazing.
Would you put that down to them being like really vertically integrated, like owning so many steps in?
Could be, but it's also, I think, because they can charge a really premium price.
Right.
I think that's, as long as they are able to charge, such a markup, they are going to be successful. As soon as this goes away for whatever the reason, and we're going to talk about these potential reasons in a bit, then it's going to be problematic because they have a huge cost structure, but at the moment it just works for them. In other words, like if you have a 10% profitability, you know that if you would decrease your prices by 10%, you would be, you would break even. You wouldn't be profitable anymore. So them not having to have any discounts just, also plays into this. As soon as they would have to have discounts, this would then become problematic potentially. Maybe as a last bit for the finance is I also love to have a look at interesting KPIs or KPIs that are industry specific. So maybe things that I usually wouldn't check because I'm not in this industry, so I don't know what typically these companies measure. So there's one KPI that companies that have stores really pay attention to, and it's called same store sales. In other words, comparable store sales. So it's a KPI that measures store and compares basically stores to stores. It means they only compare stores after 12 months of being at a certain location, and then they compare only comparable stores. The reason you want to have that, to not confuse you even more, is because you could actually grow your revenue just by opening more stores, but actually per store, you're generating less and less revenue. So you actually want to have a certain denominator at the bottom to really double check, is our revenue growing or at least being stable per store, or is it going down? So you want to compare, I don't know, a certain size of a store with another certain size of a store and see, is our growth or at least being stable, is the revenue we're generating per store stable or not, or is it growing?
Is that comparing the same brand? So comparing a Lululemon store of a certain size with another city?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, Lululemon compares its 10 stores in New York, which are all of comparable size, to 10 stores that are, I don't know, open in China.
Right.
But at the same time, they also compare it with, I don't know, a newly opened store in Germany. And what they want to see, okay, is this comparable size of the store in Germany, is it, helping us also sell more, or is it selling less? And so you take all of these comparable stores together, and then you see, is the trend upwards or downwards?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. What you're trying to just prevent here is like us adding more and more stores just for the sake of growing revenue, but actually each additional store is generating less in itself, because then you have diminishing return of opening more stores. Yeah. And this is for them actually still going up. So it went from 16 to 90% in terms of the growth. Yeah. I think that's enough of numbers for one podcast.
It's good. No, nice research. And it was 2022 numbers, Alan, so we know you didn't just rely on ChatGPT for
Exactly. Yeah, ChatGPT only gives you September 22 to 21 data, so I did some work for you, dear listeners. Shall we jump in the last bucket? So the last bucket is about what, Tom?
Is about how can they continue to win, which they clearly are, or be profitable. What are their threats? Yeah, because Franz, when you were introducing kind of how they've managed to grow and position themselves, a lot of those things, like we said, have become very, I don't want to say very common, but very reproduced by other brands, not just in fitness, but across the landscape. So yeah, how do they maintain that position?
Good one. How should we do it? Who has prepared for this?
I haven't prepared for it. I'm not going to say whose name was against this section, but we can just go through
both of us.
Round table.
Yeah, I mean,
I just wanted to find a format. So everybody throws their guesses in, what they think are threats and what they think they need to do, or how should we do this?
maybe everybody just choose the biggest one, or should we all because otherwise we're gonna be super long.
So everybody throws in the biggest threat that they think that they have.
Yeah, and if another person has already thrown the biggest one, then you go with your second biggest threat.
Okay.
So we're gonna let you go first, Tom.
Thanks. I think the biggest threat. The biggest threat for their business, I think, is probably expanding too much into other areas outside of their core. I don't know if you were looking specifically a threat from a specific brand, but they seem to be expanding into areas that I'm not sure they can win quite so readily, and will have invested heavily. So they're starting to water down that arena that they own. Right, they've just gone into footwear, and man, that's a tough one to compete.
That's
so
such an interesting one, right? So you are huge, so somehow you need to grow outside of your market, which inherently lets you lose why you became successful, which is starting out from a niche. And have you seen, I just stumbled over this, but stock price after announcement of going into footwear?
No,
really?
What happened?
Yeah, really went down. So apparently also analysts in market, they were not happy with an expansion into footwear because they felt it's a growth market, and that's true. And somehow, obviously stock traded companies need to grow. That's that thing they do. But apparently investors wished they would grow within their domains and not to go too broad, because that means delusion. I agree with that one.
Yeah, interesting. I think footwear is tough to compete with those two biggies that you talked about, but also footwear is a notoriously expensive area to keep innovating in: tooling, distribution, design, and particularly in the area they're working in performance. The amount of research that goes into developing really good performance footwear. I mean, they've got obviously the funds to do that, but it's an enormous amount of investment that means it's going to have to take a fair bit of focus away from, you would assume, the core, or the core as it has been. So that's interesting.
Yeah. True.
That's my one.
I'll let you go next, Franz.
I build on that and say inflation combined with not being able to justify the higher price point for comparable quality. So on the one hand, you're a little bit diluted already. Many other brands popping up. You might have your new favorite small company, and now that people know that Lululemon is so big, they're maybe okay, that's not the thing that I loved anymore. That's huge, and I don't know if that's cool. With the combination of generally world gets expensive, and maybe people don't wanna and can't spend $120 for a leggings. So I think this combination with okay alternatives, similar brand image, similar quality, and also people being more stripped when it comes to money, I think that's a threat.
So we have focus and we have economic downturn in a way, right? So maybe the third one, so you took my two, I'll go with maybe brand reputation. So I think a company that charges premium the way Lululemon does, it really relies on having, just a really good brand reputation. So if there is something that either waters down this brand image, or whether there is, I don't know, a backlash, that could be detrimental to the business.
Yeah.
Just for example, imagine having one of the suppliers not treating the workers in the right way, or somebody finding a story of this fabric not being as organic as it's advertised, or something else. I think this in itself just starts to raise questions for people, for consumers. And this then combined with what Franz said, which is economic downturn and inflation, just could lead to 5% of people buying a little bit less, and then you're not profitable anymore, or maybe you're barely profitable.
Yeah.
Partially, Tom, you covered this brand reputation also with having less focus, because branding is all about being very clear on what you do. So it depends on what the brand is built around. So if it's built around okay, we do this type of product, then extending a product range can be a problem. But if the brand is built on we do things certain way, then you can expand in different things. An example of that is Virgin, just the whole story of the brand is we do things the certain way, and we can expand into different areas, and that's actually our story. But for certain brands, and it does seem based on what the stock price or at least investors communicated to Lululemon when they introduced the shoes, the shoe line, is that maybe for them this athleisure is the space they should stay in, because otherwise you are watering down this branding. So it doesn't even have to be a big stain on the brand. It can just be stretching it too thin. The branding.
I think these are two ends to a continuum. The thing that Tom says, I think this is let's say a very slow process that, if not stopped, will slowly kill a company. You're stretching yourself out too thin. You don't really notice. You think it's okay. You still grow reasonably. But after all, people don't think of your brand anymore like they used to. And the thing that you said, Alen, that's more on the other continuum, like a house of cards falling down. If they fuck up something that's connected to their values, I think that can have huge impact, because a lot of their love from their community, which many call cult, is built on value driven relation, right? And they position themselves as a company who follows these values. And if something happens, and that's what I referred to actually in the beginning, there was already some weird stuff happening. 2013, they had quality issues, and then a lot of people complained, and then their founder, this chap, how was he called again?
Chip Wilson,
he said that he thinks that this is due to women's bodies and movement, and not due to manufacturing defects. So that was already that was 2013. So if this is a public, when did they go public? 2007.
2007, yeah.
Okay, so I am.
Yeah, it's.
I haven't.
One
checked,
wrong statement.
Exactly. I haven't checked actually how what the stock price did with this devastating statement, but I think now this is even more. This can have even
Social
more. Can even have more impact if you And when I say fuck up, I don't mean you made a small mistake, but obviously these things are majorly wrong. And some examples brought by Alen are the ones that can really pull a company like this down. Because honestly, it won't pull Nike down.
No.
But
I mean, you've only got to look at Nike have had some controversies with some of their collaborators recently. Even Adidas with Kanye West. I mean, that's had a massive impact on their profitability, but they have enough diversity in their portfolio that means that.
And their brand is not built on value driven, right?
Yeah.
But if your brand is built on value driven business, and then you make mistakes in that, that can have even bigger impact.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
those comments, they are like really misguided comments that he made back in the day, and I think he had to step down after those. And yeah, 2013, less competition in the market. You make like comments like that now, like there's so much more competition. You are, yeah. If people are going to flock away from you, there's plenty of other options now. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That could be a real threat. Those kind of things if they crop up again.
Mm. But let's end on a positive note and talk about opportunities. So maybe I can share one, and then you can do the same if you have anything. So on the flip side, Tom, of like, what's another way to grow? So instead of you growing into new product categories, you could just grow into new geographic locations. So I had a look at where they have stores, and obviously like US seems to be well covered, 330 or 50 stores, just crazy. 120 stores in China. There's plenty of stores around Europe as well. But then you have these up and coming markets. Like in the last episode we talked about, or 2 episodes back, we talked about India being a huge up and coming market, and they have 0 stores there. So looking for these. So like putting yourselves in the shoes of the founder in 1998, like, okay, where is maybe the market, in which locations maybe the market at this stage that US was in, or Canada was in 1998, and you may find new also like locations. The problem there may be like, can you actually charge the premium price the same way? But I imagine with like these big metropolitan cities, you can always find the customer target that you're looking for. And what tells me that this is possible is they have 120-ish stores in China.
Yeah, there's emerging middle classes and wealthy classes in a lot of places now, right? Where there is going to be, although it might be a smaller market, there is going to be some there. I guess, yeah, it's a difficult one. Because, and I think Chip Wilson has made comments about this, of like, this comes back to the whole growth at all costs thing, right? I don't want to turn the podcast into a that topic, but I wouldn't. Like, can we put a cap on this stuff, right? I know it goes to the core of the kind of being a publicly limited company and that ethos, but I know that is not something that him as the former founder buys into. And it's part of the reason why they're going into footwear, and it's short-termist, yes, going to give your shareholders a lot of value, but long-term not so good. So I would want them, to your point, Alan, maybe to look for those new geographical markets and maybe pull in the product line expansion. But it sounds like India might be a place, South America maybe, but I don't know, to be really honest with you, but I'd prefer that was the strategy than going massively broad and watering down the offering.
Yeah. I go with diversifying into services and this is why I like the mirror acquisition. So I believe that diversifying into other products and sports is pushed to the boundaries, and this is why I think this having this, they call it Lululemon Studio now, having subscriptions to that. Firstly, I mean, this is selling devices, so it's again a hardware product, but then it's about subscriptions, it's about being part of trainings, it helps them also build a community. So it's basically, I think, reinforcing the business model, because you can do sports online together. You can not only do something with a trainer, but you can also do it in group with this mirror thing. So I think it's, from a revenue stream perspective, very interesting. It is not only digital, but still, I don't know if I would only if I would only bet on the hardware product, but maybe there is a fully digital way of having this Lululemon Studio too, and I would go into services.
That's a good one. Yeah. So let's wrap it up with one. I have one question for both of you, and I'll also answer, which is this was almost like an investor relations call, right? So somebody going and doing an analysis of a company, and it could be seen as investment advice. Disclaimer: this is for entertainment purposes only. But yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question, which is in this position, after having done some of the research and us talking now through this, and without looking the price of the company, just like in general, are you buying the stock? Are you selling, or are you just holding?
I'm happy to go first. And this comes from a person who's been a big fan of the brand for a while. I think I'd be selling.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, Tom, that's straight into the heart.
Sells. That's I'll let Franz go.
Yeah.
But why?
But why? Yes. I think for the reasons that we talked about around state of the economy. Like even me, as like someone who really loves the brand, if I'm going to be buying some stuff soon, it's really hard to justify those prices right now. So I'm going to be looking out for comparable quality, different brands, and I consider myself like quite into them as a brand. So I think that speaks volumes for me. But this whole diversification into footwear and like just from a aesthetic level, the footwear is not doing it for me. No offense to anyone who loves Skechers, but it gives me big Skechers energy, and I don't see that
feeling.
as the kind of brand vibe, man. Like it's just not doing it for me at all, and I think it's going to be a big detractor as far as brand equity and style and design that have been so central to being appealing.
Franz?
I'm also a sell. I'm
Selling.
maybe a holder. I'm definitely not buying. But I also need to admit, I obviously had a look at the share price in preparation of this call. And I was like, what?
Yeah, but at the same time, like the stock price always depends on how many stocks are
and market
issued.
cap.
Yes, market cap is 50 billion, so yeah, it's not nothing. It is good.
What about you, Alen? What are you doing?
It's a hard one. I mean, I think I would be a buyer on a short term, maybe for like a year or 2 years. But since I don't like buying things on a short term, I probably just would hold or not buy. Because I think it has a potential to still keep growing because of everything that has happened over the last 2 years. There's a lot of still wind in their, how would you say, sales. And at the same time, luxury products are usually able to still raise prices during inflation. A lot of luxury products can do this. The question is, can Lululemon do it? So I think it could weather the storm. So I'm not so concerned about the economic downturn and the short view. I'm just, I don't know. I just think it has more ways it could go wrong than a company like Nike or even a company that's not built around values. Because at this stage, this is also very risky for this size of the company being on a public market and not being like
and for this kind of
family
company,
owned or whatever.
Apparel.
Yes, apparel, yeah. Because we've seen it with Patagonia, like they're privately owned and they've been at 1 billion revenue for a few years. And like it doesn't matter, right? They can be. I mean, it's a great business.
Yeah.
Why push it? So I'm gonna go with Holt.
Cool. We're not bullish on Lululemon after all that.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the research, I was like, wow, this is really, really nice. But now in the end, I'm just, I'm not super convinced anymore.
But we also didn't tear it down in this sense of the word, right? Because
yes.
I actually wish that we also have one season where we tear it down, like tear down a company in like the sense of the word, tearing it down. Because it's like...
I'm sure we'll find some candidates.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Because, I mean,
yeah.
you can understand it both ways. And I was like, preparing this, I was like, that's not really tearing it down. That's like pep talk. They did a good job with their strategy.
Analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think something for us to, moving forward, got our critical eye on things a lot more. I think we've sort of explored that a little bit at the end, but Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find it. We'll get our opportunities to go to town on that, Franz.
Cool.
Looking forward to
So we'll pick the next company, or if you have an idea for which company we should do next, you can also
Yeah.
reach out to us.
Give us your sweetheart and we'll tear it apart.
You can drop your suggestions on YouTube below this video, or you can also just write to us at hello@d.MBA. And yeah, we may do it. But if you stuck with us for an hour and 20 minutes, we think you may also enjoy our email course. It's a 7-day free email course called Mini MBA. So you can subscribe to it at d.mba/mini-MBA. And what it essentially is like you sign up, and over 7 days, you get 7 emails, each of them teaching you business frameworks relevant to the work of designers. Some of them also covered in this episode, but we go deeper also in the emails into how to use them in your work. So if you're interested in this, head over to d.mba/mini-MBA. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks, Franz. Thanks, Tom. See you in the next one.
Thank you both. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.